Thank you all and welcome to this special town hall. We're having a conversation tonight about how we can stop the school to prison pipeline. We understand that police brutality is yet but one piece of a very large puzzle of systemic oppression. And tonight we're starting with education. I've had the opportunity to meet some amazing people, and the internet is full of some great people, and I'm happy to have met all of these women. And so I'm going to go over again these wonderful bios because y'all missed out on who these amazing people are. So please meet Miss Jasmine Banks. She is the founder of Bankable Behavior. She's an educator, activist, and self-proclaimed encourager and thought partner. After completing her undergraduate degree in Los Angeles, she relocated to Phoenix, Arizona as a 2010 Teach for America Corps member. She was a kindergarten fourth grade special education teacher at Solano Elementary, where she also served in multiple roles ranging from mentor teacher, after-school program coordinator, and coach of the boys' soccer, basketball, and volleyball team. During her 4 years at Solano, Jasmine's students achieved on par with their typical peers on state assessments and achieved an average of 1.5 years of reading growth. She was then selected to serve as an instructional and leadership coach to Corps members in both the greater Las Vegas Valley and Los Angeles area, where she coached and developed on average 30 teachers per year for a total of 4 years from both charter and district schools. Most recently, Jasmine has engaged in seeking systemic change by being a principal who is passionate about maximizing the learning for Black and Latin students by supporting and uplifting the talent of her team and genuinely partnering with families to best meet and reach the potential of full potential of every one of her students. Jasmine holds a BS in Business Administration from the University of Southern California and an MED in Special Education from Arizona State University. So please welcome Jasmine Banks to our panel.
Hi, everyone. Dr. H, there's a little bit of some playback, so I don't know if it's your speakers or what, but I can hear a little bit of an echo.
Of an echo?
Yeah.
Let's see. I can turn one of my speakers down. Okay, because I
do want to say hi to everyone that joined, and
I am not watching from my phone or my computer like I normally do. So, you all, let's meet Dr. Rachel Trammell. I also met Dr. Rachel online. She is the owner, founder of her own health counseling, RMHCI. She is originally from Michigan, and she moved to South Florida over 35 years ago. She received her undergraduate degree from Barry University in Miami, Florida, with a BS in behavioral science. She received her master's degree from Capella University in mental health counseling and a PhD in psychology from Capella University, Albert dissertation. She has an emphasis on personality disorders, trauma, grief, loss issues. Dr. Trammell's passion is working with individuals experiencing grief and loss issues, including childhood trauma, pet loss, women's issues, depression, substance abuse, dual diagnosis, and medical conditions such as polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, and any other chronic illness. Areas of practice include individuals, children, adolescents, families, couples, plural relationships, LGBT community. Over the past 23 years, she has gained significant experience in areas of program development, leadership, law, business, and mental health consulting. She also has over 27 years experience with geriatric care management. Dr. Trammell is a member of the Mental Health Counselors Association of Palm Beach County and ACLU. Dr. Trammell has spent countless hours petitioning the legislation of Florida and Washington to implement more programs to help serve the mental health, along with advocating for equal rights and to ensure gun safety laws are put into place. So please welcome Doc Rachel Trammell.
Hello, so glad to be here, everybody.
Absolutely. You guys, most of you who have been on our town halls, on my regular town halls, are no stranger to Epiphany. Epiphany Mcafee I met her a couple months ago and through someone else. And I'm telling you, it's been nothing but a pleasure to meet and connect with her and just learning so much about her and what she does and who she is as a person. And so it's amazing to see how much she's grown and all of the different things that she's done. She has a lot of experience, and she and I have had the opportunity to talk offline a lot, especially about her experiences as an educator. She has had so much experience in K through 12 and in learning so much about her students and who they are and just the overall healthcare system. And so you all please welcome Epiphany Mcafee. She is, again, no stranger. I mean, absolutely no stranger to us. She is currently working on her own degree. She's pursuing her own higher ed degree. She will be finished next year, I believe you said, next May, with her doctorate. I think she's doing the EDD.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
EDS.
Yes. She also has a Master of Education with a concentration and special education.
Yeah.
So again, she's no stranger to us. Welcome everybody, Miss Epiphany Mcafee.
Hello.
So you guys, this has been again a dream of mine, but I'm very happy to be having this conversation to absolutely facilitate the conversation, because the goal here is so that we can have conversation about how we can stop the school to prison pipeline. And the main thing is at this point is how first we need to identify, what are some of the things that affect that are in our school system that are markers for the school to prison pipeline. So I'm going to start with Miss Jasmine and share with us some of the things that you have seen that you can identify in our education system that we can readily address, or things that stand out to you that say, this is going to put a child on the pathway to a prison cell or to a jail cell. What are some things that you've seen in your experiences that lead to that we can start to flesh out?
Yeah, so I view like our school buildings and educational system as little fishbowls and microcosms of our greater society. So it's just replicated with little people and young learners as opposed to adults in our greater society. So issues that have created a school to prison pipeline is internalized bias against people of color, in particular, Black men and Black women, Black girls and Black boys, and not really seeing them as vessels that can build their knowledge, but already viewing them as an issue. And when you shared my bio, I've coached a lot of teachers over the years, great teachers, good teachers who have good hearts, but they're not creating opportunities for students to utilize their voice, for them to do their own thinking. They're put in situations where the teacher is the authoritative figure in the classroom. And when things are not going in line with what that teacher views should happen, that's when discipline, or I like to call it punishment instead, is enforced. So students aren't given the opportunity to really think through their choices. They're not given the opportunity to think through their curriculum in general and build their critical thinking skills. And so when they don't fit that norm of what should occur in the classroom, then punishment is then used as the next appropriate option for that child. And if you rack up so many opportunities of punishment, it leads to suspensions, expulsions, and then they're left to their own devices in the real world. So I really believe, and I'm a firm believer in, that there needs to be asset-based thinking and mindset building with teachers at the forefront of their career, even before they get into the classroom. And there needs to be ongoing coaching and support for adults in the building so they can start developing a holistic view of children and a cultural affirming view of children, and how is that being adopted in the classroom day in and day out. So students are being empowered to be themselves and to embrace their identities, as opposed to conforming to what that teacher thinks should happen in their school building.
Right. I think that I agree with you. I've talked to some other people who are in education offline, and one of the things that that's consistent that I've heard is the issue of critical thinking and really encouraging that among students, themselves, and really helping along the way in dealing with some of those things that happen with them, not just inside the classroom, but outside, and looking at the holistic approach to who the child is, especially in the community and the surrounding areas. So Epiphany, in your experiences, because you've worked in several different environments in schools, like I said, offline about some of your experiences, and God bless you all for K through 12, because it's very different for me in higher education. But I see some things even by the time if they make it to higher education and choose that that's what they want to do. I can definitely see a lot of what you're saying, Jasmine, in a lot of the students and some of the struggles that they still have in trying to better themselves. So Epiphany, in your experiences and things that you have seen, what are some things that you can identify as markers that contribute to what we're seeing as far as that's systemic in our education system?
Okay, first I'm going to give a little technology help because I do hear feedback, and I'm getting information that someone hears feedback. So if you're listening to the show on another device, just turn it all the way down. I don't know if one of us.
Right. Yeah, because I'm not watching. I promise it's not me this time.
Yeah, no.
Okay. All right. So one of the things, because I have worked in the Southwest, so I'm from New Mexico, so I'm very familiar with that area. Then I also worked in Florida. Now I've worked in DC. Actually, I've worked in everywhere, DMV pretty much. The biggest thing or the biggest contrasting thing that I can see is that I do agree with you, Jasmine, is that we are punishing our students early. But I do notice that there's a truancy issue, meaning if a student, for instance, I would say as far as pre-K, right? I worked at a K through 8 or pre-K through 8 school, and I noticed that students that were struggling socially, emotionally, early on were given to the guidance counselor, were given to the social workers, or were given to whomever, and they would walk around with these people every day, almost the entire day, as a way to control their behavior. And I really believe that these students, when they're reintroduced into the classroom, they get overwhelmed with learning. So that being said, when you have this dynamic of me not being able to manage my own behaviors and manage my emotions, coupled with the fact that I missed out on weeks of learning, that creates an issue. Okay. So then, you go all the way through high school culture and you have a truancy issue. You have other issues that when the student is outside the classroom, they're able to interact with other students that may not be doing the best things either. And they're learning certain things from other people. So my experience working pretty much K through 12, all the way through, and in environments that haven't been the best, and also some great environments. I really think that is an issue. Another issue is not holding students accountable or to them. I have actually gone through the Breathe for Change program, which, if you're not familiar with it, is a yoga / mindful meditation, and I am certified. And I went through that 2 years ago. I think that there's a way, when you go through that program, there's a way to connect with your emotions. And you, as an educator, don't even know how to do yourself. And you realize how much trauma that or latent trauma, I believe it's called, that you've received on the back end, listening to certain things. But holding students accountable in a way, like to kind of like not confuse everybody, but holding students accountable in a way where they have to reflect about their actions. So if they, I have students walk up to a teacher and slap them all the way down to the ground and no consequence. So I can see so there's extreme behaviors, and there are behaviors that you can work through with students. I think that a lot of people, especially in the area in which I work, is kind of looked upon like they're emotionally disturbed. They shouldn't be held accountable. And then when they hit 18, they're held accountable they have been conditioned to thinking that there is no consequence for their actions. They've allowed all these points or whatever to these charges to rack up on these kids, and they have case files that are, big, and the kids don't know what the consequences are. It's kind of like they don't know what the value of $1 is. So I think that it's a twofold thing. There's so many different nuances, and it all depends on what part of the country you're in. Because in New Mexico, I didn't know it, but I definitely see it in this area. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. I think that you definitely raised lots and lots of good points. And I do think this is why it's important to have people in different areas from different places, because it's not the same here as it is in another place. And so I think that it's important to identify that, to be sure that we understand we're not having a conversation in silos, you know what I mean? And so I'm glad that you shared your experiences. We also see how Jasmine's experiences, what her experiences are out west, and then here on the East Coast and what it's like. I want to get Doc Rachel into this conversation because with her background in mental health, in working with adolescents and children and things like that, in your field, what are some things that you are seeing that could possibly contribute to some of the struggles that students have that affect their ability to behave well or perform in, when they go to school?
Well, first, I like to say I like to shout out to the teachers that are really good and really, they can shape a child. I always say, stop and think a child is listening. What I found years ago, I started working in the inner cities, and I remember a particular IEP meeting. For you of those that don't know, an IEP meeting is individual educational plan. And this young gentleman was sitting in an IEP, and at the time I was a case manager, and they asked him, what his goals were, and he says, I'd like to go to college, and everybody laughed. And I said, so what's so funny? And I watched them start to talk to this gentleman about, you're not college material. You can't concentrate. So they discouraged him, and I said, well, I don't understand why not. What we're finding is the educational system is kind of like a cookie cutter. If you don't think the same way or learn the same way, you tend to get a little lost. So eventually, this young man ended up in the prison system with several other, young gentlemen in the community have, ended up getting into the gang life. And unfortunately, they are serving time. I just remember how he put his head down, and there was, and the way that they talked to even the grandmother at the time was, are you sure college? I struggled with learning disabilities my whole life. And I remember being in the educational system and they telling my mother, you know what, she's not college material. You might want to consider trade school. I just didn't learn like everybody else did. And I got to tell you, some of these classes, 3 algebra classes, I don't think with a doctorate degree, I can even keep up with the algebra. But, and we're not investing in the children. And sometimes they get discouraged, so they start dropping out. There was a school a couple years ago that kind of worked on that same issue, and it was called Children with Purpose. And unfortunately, I think they ran out of funding, but it was awesome because if they didn't have if the kid had to get up and had attention issues, they got up and walked around. If they had issues at home, I think teachers are under the gun a lot. I think that it would be beneficial that everybody would maybe have the conversation and learn the different cultures, because everybody is not cookie cutter. The way social economic status, one way the education system is compared to the others. And I think everybody has an equal opportunity to go to college, regardless of your background or where you come from. And this is where we're implanting that if you don't have a high score at this, or if you're not good at this, you're not going to be somebody. And unfortunately, with this self-esteem, that they start joining the gangs, and then that's what happens.
So I think that we definitely identified some things, and I definitely want to dig a little bit deeper into, now that we know some of the things that can lead to some things that we've identified that contribute to or promote the school to prison pipeline. There's a lot of research out there that supports, especially some of the things that Jasmine talked about, identified that I just wonder why we're not implementing more of those things. And I don't know if it's a matter of we don't want to, or is it a matter of funding? But there are some things that we can do to take a proactive approach to addressing some of the student needs, whether it's stress, it's peer pressure, things that are happening at home, that will reduce the need for disciplinary action and improve student performance. There's lots of research out there, whether it's mindfulness. I've seen over the past couple of years a lot of schools experimenting with yoga and mindfulness and meditation and different things, and a lot of good positive things are coming out of it. And so I'm just wondering, what are some of the apprehension that you all can probably sense, or that for not promoting things that we know that will lead to a better learning experience for children in our schools?
Well, my nephew had a comment, and he asked me to read it because I have a watch party going, and you guys can't see his comment. So if you guys don't mind, I want to share it with you because he asked me to share it. But he said, first off, so I don't know if that's how it's supposed to read, but he said, first off, I would like to start with structure schedules. Eat at a certain time, prepare them for a structural prison system. Also, little outside experience, minimal interactions and personal experiences with teachers and students. Some teachers do not share personal experiences with their students. Teachers are out in rough places where they are not able to build relationships with students because they have to make sure their students pass and don't get fired, and so the teachers don't get fired. Right. We are not numbers. We are students.
Absolutely.
Most students in most schools in the high poverty areas that don't get as much funding, and private schools and rich schools will get it. So it starts with the educational gap. They already view it as numbers, statistics. More funding for schools in poverty is the start. So that's what he of course, that is a systemic issue we already know about, and I completely and wholeheartedly agree. But I just wanted to read that comment and let you ladies share and build upon that, because I feel like that's a good starting point.
And where's your nephew? What area is he in?
He went to school. So for his I'll give you his bio. He actually is from Miami Gardens, or Opelika, which is not a great area in Miami. His mom actually worked very hard to send him to private school in the 9th grade. He then got a full ride scholarship to play football at Syracuse. So he's like my son. Like, this is my nephew. He's like my nephew's son. Even though, so that is his bio. But I think if he would have gone to a different high school and had a different experience, I don't know if the outcome would have been as positive. Plus, I can't say that I was always there, but with me meeting him at like 13, 14, I would go and pick him up on the weekends, and I would just say, I'm going to keep my nephew. I would go to his track meets when his mother couldn't go. So it was really family oriented, and helped bring him up, and for him and his sisters and his youngest brother's in college now. So, to have 3 kids that are, out of your 4 that have gone to college and graduate is an amazing thing to come out of an area like Opelika.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that what he said was spot on, actually. They're not just numbers. They don't take, again, some teachers, they're under the gun, and I get it. But one of the things that I've noticed and I've had to bring the attention is embarrassing students. These kids, stop and think a child is listening. You are shaping them.
Right.
A lot of the comments that have been made, I've had to sit in on a couple of IEP meetings and said, this is not okay. This is not okay because somebody doesn't understand something and they're embarrassed in front of their peers. And a lot of it we're finding out even at a young age, they don't sit down, they don't sit still. Well, I don't know any 5-year-old that sits still, okay? I certainly still have a hard time as an adult. I've got to do 500 things at the time. So their thing is they're not focusing. The next thing you know, we're building we're putting kids on Adderall and things that are just a stimulant of cocaine, really. And it's like giving kids 2 lines of coke, these ADHD medications, and then we start getting into the system. Then you find out kids are on 7 medications for what? Because they don't want to fit into your cookie cutter way of learning.
Right.
Stop and my biggest thing, stop and think a child is listening. Learn your culture, learn the different cultures. And I've seen teachers be really disrespectful on people's cultures.
Right.
It's not funny. I mean, I've seen them when I was in school, but I mean, you have to meet a child where they're at. I say use the humanistic approach. People are not techniques, pretty much.
Right. I think that there's definitely a lot of emphasis on making sure that students pass the test, and so teachers are so laser focused on that. But there's different learning styles, and I feel that it's important that I get that's important. And we've seen some horrible things in the news. I know some years ago we had some teachers and administrators that were indicted in Atlanta because they were cheating and helping students pass the test because my job depends on it. And when you put that pressure on it, it changes people's whole perception of why they became a teacher in the first place. And I think that is very unfortunate. And so I definitely want to hear from you, Jasmine, on your thoughts on what we're talking about, because I do find it unfortunate that we do place so much emphasis on this end of the year test. I personally know someone who, when they first started teaching, they were doing lesson plans and they were going to do this, and they looked at her and everybody said, what are you doing? Your students are not going to pass that test and you're going to lose your job. And she was like, but I became a teacher because this is what I want to do. And her heart was literally broken because now the reason I became a teacher is basically being taken away from me. And so I feel that sometimes teachers are put into a difficult position just as much as administrators. And so it's a cycle that has been created that's not really in the best interest of everyone involved, especially the student. And so I definitely want to hear from you as someone who's in administration, but also who's been a teacher.
Yeah, it's definitely, there has to be a mindset shift with administrators. It needs to start with leadership. So if you as a leader, and I'm speaking as somebody that's been a principal, right? Like if you're not viewing your students as somebody as a holistic person, somebody that learns in different ways. So I appreciate Dr. Rachel bringing that up because there's varying learning styles. We have to embrace our students' culture. Like I shared before, we have to create a classroom that embraces cultural wealth and not white supremacist dominant norms, right? Yeah. So if it doesn't start from the leadership, it's very difficult for teachers to fully flesh that out and to create an inclusive environment if they're getting that, negative say talk in their ears of what they should be doing.
Absolutely.
People need to also realize that if you're able to create an inclusive classroom and a classroom that allows students to do hands-on activities, experiential learning, project-based learning, they're going to learn the material in a deeper way and be able to apply that on a test way better than if they're just doing, skill drill, memorizing facts over and over and over again.
Yes.
So when people start, if you're one of those people that's very data oriented and we need to pass these tests, if you're able to make that shift and take the time to go through resources and learn from schools that are doing it very well, it's easier to apply that to your school and you're going to be able to hit those numbers that you're striving towards. Because I also am very realistic that us four here are very firm on affirming students and very proud of doing that. We have some other people that are very logical and rational of like, I need to get funding based off of test scores. So if you're able to tap into their data analysis skills and backwards plan it with, you can still create these environments and inclusive environments and reach your goals. That's what I think needs to be the biggest shift. It's just real conversations of, by doing these things, you can still reach your quantitative goals by creating more quality, inclusive classrooms.
I agree. I love that. I'm a proponent of the 3 C's of learning, which is critical, creative, and constructive. And if you can think critically, you can apply what you are learning and pass that test. But again, I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think it's a matter of finding that balance between that style of learning and what you're talking about, and people who are very much data analytical, and blending the two. And it goes back to I think what Doc Rachel was saying about creating a culture. We got to have a creative culture. We have to create a culture of learning that blends all of these different things together, so that we respect who everybody is. First of all, we have to see people as human beings. These are children. I can tell you right now, as a child growing up here in South Florida, I was literally in like first grade, maybe, when I experienced racism from a substitute teacher. And you're talking about a school that's 70%, that was 60 to 70% Black. And so it's very important that we understand, first of all, why are you a teacher? And understanding that these children, and like Dr. Rachel said, your function is you're here to shape young minds. And we need to make sure that we're creating a culture in our education system that says that we care about who you are as a person and want to give you the best possible future. And identify that, first of all, everybody's culture is different and everybody learns different. The fundamental of learning as a teacher, you got to know the different learning styles. Some people are auditory, some people are visual. You have to tie all of that into who this person is as a unique individual. And like you said, their culture, and not disrespect a person's culture because you don't like it, or you're uncomfortable with it, or you don't know. Educate yourself so that you do. As we shift in this climate to be definitely all inclusive, one of the things that I'm interested in learning is how can we move forward, particularly now that we are experiencing COVID and everything is definitely virtual. And we don't know if we'll get back to face-to-face. I know here in South Florida, one of the things they are experimenting is with, and this is going to hit on what Epiphany just said from his nephew about the block schedules. So they're talking about here experimenting with different schedules. So they want to stagger the schedules on top of alternating days. So if you go to school on Tuesday, you'll go to school on Tuesday and Thursday or whatever. And this set of students are going to go on Monday and Wednesday. And those days that you're not at school, you're going to be online. And then, you still have to deal with and then on top of that, they're still trying to do block schedules. So it's still a way to be able to figure that out, but you also have to figure out, how is that going to affect the home unit and parents and different things, because that weighs on students. We've had tons of students here in South Florida over the past year, just in my city alone, teenagers literally committing suicide. One student, this young man literally walked into a train on purpose because of stress from his home life. Okay. And so a lot of that will absolutely affect a child's ability to function and perform in the classroom, or even at school, and how they associate with other students and with people. And so I'm concerned about definitely how we're scheduling kids, when it comes to school, how much time they're spending in looking at one thing and not having that flexibility, but also just a lot of different things. Are we addressing the total student and being able to be able to nurture our students beyond the classroom? Growing up, my teachers nurtured me beyond just learning in the classroom. They cared about me totally as a holistic person. I think that had a lot of influence on me deciding my future goals, of whether I'm going to college or whether I'm going to do this or whether I'm going to do that, and identifying, who I am as a person and figuring out who I am and not having that pressure. A lot of our children now have a lot of pressures on them that they're not used to handling. So how can we address those things as we start moving forward and trying to adjust amid COVID?
So you did a lot. Oh, Dr. H. I'm sorry, Dr. Rachel. If you want to take this one, I will piggyback whatever you say, honey bun.
Well, okay. And I kind of
Dr. Rachel, what happened? Dr. Rachel, we don't hear you.
You don't hear me?
Okay.
Now we can.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, you're back.
So basically, I think we need to start, okay, as a society, we need to start finding out what, ask the questions, get a little bit comfortable. Like, the issue is, we're on Facebook, everybody has an opinion. But until you start learning other cultures and kind of asking the questions, you can't make an assumption. It starts with the top. Kids come to school and they're dealing, I've dealt with a lot of children that have had intense trauma. They're dealing with family members that have been killed to violence. We've had foster children. We got to understand that this child is battling something. And one of the comments that I've read online is when they wanted to offer free breakfast for children, the comments we got was, how can you not afford breakfast? What is wrong with you? And the very judgmental attitudes. But you know what? People sometimes don't have the money for breakfast. $5 is a lot of money for somebody who has several children. And you don't know if that family's battling. You don't know if mom is getting homeless. This is the other issue that we're having as well in Palm Beach County. There's over 6,000 homeless children currently in Palm Beach County. And there is no emergency housing in Palm Beach County.
Yeah.
So they're not only seeing this, they're also they're witnessing shootings. They're witnessing, I've worked in a lot of the neighborhoods. Children shouldn't have to deal with it. They hear the gunshots. Miss Rachel, we hit the floor. Children are dealing with things that they shouldn't be dealing with. Children should be able to go to school, feel safe. Not only that, is a totally different topic. Our children are protected. That's the other thing. It also starts with our leaders. If we go and start insulting people because we don't agree with them, what are we teaching our children? Right. And I know a lot of people laugh and say, "Oh, everybody gets a participation trophy." I don't think you should win or lose. Give them a chance. That's the other thing. If we make it so strict, like 3 algebra classes, this, that, calculus, honestly, who's going to continue to graduate? I didn't do calculus when I graduated. I couldn't pass that math test. My mother kept saying, "I'm gonna kick you in the next week." But I think.
Dr. Rachel, you're going in and out.
Yeah, Dr. Rachel, your audio is going in and out.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Not really.
Like barely. We could barely hear you.
Okay, wait, Dr. Rachel, something's going on with your mic? You went out again.
Am I out again?
Oh no,
that's much better.
What you're doing right now is perfect.
So I would suggest
don't move.
Yes. Multicultural training. Ask yourself the question, and you know what? They don't teach enough of that.
Right.
Learning the other cultures. I didn't get accepted in cultures. I had to actually sit with the cultures and ask the questions. Don't make assumptions. I think our world is we're making assumptions on things we just like. If you don't know about something, go ask.
Right.
How do you know? And for people to laugh that families don't have money, they don't have money to feed their children, and that very judgmental. Some of the kids, that's their only meal that they get is at school. And a lot of when I'm counseling even 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, I would like mommy and daddy to have a home. This is what they're working with. Mm-hmm. We're living in our car.
Right. I think it's important. Epiphany, jump in here and share what your thoughts are. We're going to transition to here to talk about some of these comments.
I feel like you said too much a little bit back there. I was like 18 different questions. I just want to let you know, Dr. H. And even those of us with degrees, we need another degree to speak Dr. H. But anyway. But anyway, you know what? I had to do it. It's not a show if I don't throw some sort of shade. But here we go. So Cindy Marks had a great question. She
Yes.
said, do you have a suggestion for an organization that does cultural training for admin, teacher, staff to change the cultural climate in schools? So because I've worked in Palm Beach County, I didn't know if I was supposed to say that or not. I have worked in Palm Beach County, actually worked in Broward County. I've worked in Baltimore, DC, you know, I've worked at all of them. But, you know, in the variation of working in like somewhere like Palm Beach County where that county is its own world. I'm gonna say that. And I did work in the upper echelon area of the county where if you did not have the money for breakfast, like Dr. Rachel was saying, you were not getting food, period. And there was a lot of the times where I would be friends with the lunch lady and I would say, look, give them the food. You're going to throw it away anyway. Oh, we can't. Oh, this, oh, that. So you're going to send the kid home hungry? This makes no sense. I'm not understanding. I'm just not understanding how can you get in trouble for giving a child food? Right. So that's number one. It is culturally insensitive when you have the school that I worked at last in Palm Beach County. I will just kind of give a polarity example. You had the haves and you had the have-nots. You did not have that middle class or that middle ground of students. They either had it or they didn't have it. And it was a different kind of situation for me because I've always either nobody had it or everybody had it. Like that was just a different situation for me to be in a school like this. So culturally, I say a lot of crazy things and I do get away with them because I am Black and it is my culture and, you know, whatever. And we're supposed to be quote unquote this or that, or, you know, Diary of a Mad Black Woman. But there would be some of my white counterparts that would say some things and it would be viewed upon as racist or what have you. I think the issue is like Jasmine said, we do need to incorporate a way of teaching to reach every child, but we also need to allow teachers to get to know their students. You can't know a culture, especially I can teach you about a culture. I can teach you about African American culture. Do I adhere to all the standards of African American culture? I may not. Dr. Hughes, you may not. You know, so at the end of the day, we have our own cultural system set up within ourselves as well. So if you don't allow teachers to get to know their students individually, it's not even a cultural issue, it's an individual student issue. If I don't know what makes my individual student tick, I cannot get them to get test scores. I'm going to tell you, the school that I was at, I bumped 2 teachers out of their reading positions. I was only teaching 3 years. They had been teaching 15 years. You want to know why? Because I sat with my students. I talked to my students. I asked them what was going on in their daily life, whether they were rich or not. And those kids wanted to perform for me, not because I was shoving this or that down their throat, but because I made the class real and I explained to them, hey, this is why we are doing this. We are in the generation of why. The kids want to know why they're learning, what they're learning, how they're learning it, and what the outcome is going to be. If we cannot answer that, we're not doing our kids a service. So, for instance, a student asked me, why do we need algebra, Miss McCann? Man, how do you answer this question? I'm going to give everyone the answer, and you better quote me when you give them the answer because I have an answer why you need to do algebra. I answered the little girl. I don't remember her name, but I remember the question. I said, you know what? Great question. I said, you know how you want to learn how to drive? She was like, yeah. I said, we all want to learn how to drive, right? Everyone's like, yeah, I'm getting my license. I'm getting this car, right? I said, there's a formula. It's distance equals rate times time. When you're making that left-hand turn, you're making an estimation on that particular formula. And that is why you need to learn algebra. Now, that's not the whole answer for all of algebra, but if you can give them something to build upon, then they're gonna want to learn it. So you need to learn, you need to know each individual student. Each one of my students can tell you, any of them, they can tell you, Miss McCann knew who I was. I didn't know that she knew what I was doing, but she knew. I can go to IEP meetings and I'm like, oh, this, and this, and this. Remember when you did this? This is what we need to work on. And they'll be like, I didn't know you noticed. Of course I noticed. I'm your teacher. That's my job. So as a teacher, you have to care who they are as individuals, not necessarily, and then the culture secondary, I would say.
I think one of the challenges is it's difficult as a teacher to get to know your students when you have so many students in the class. And so I want to take time to look at the Jasmine kind of knows where I'm going, the teacher to student ratio, because we have too many classes that are overloaded with students, and we're expecting teachers to really dedicate and give these students what they need. And to do what Epiphany is talking about and to do what you all are talking about requires the ability to not be sitting here overloaded, which I know a lot of it has to do with budget. But we've been defunding education for years, and we need to put money back into education so that we don't have 50, 40 students in a class. I'm just throwing it out there. But when I grew up, there was not more than 20 students in my classrooms growing up here in South Florida. Even when I moved to North Carolina and went to school there, we did not have students on top of students on top of students. Like the whole issue, like education in our country, we understood student to teacher ratio, and you were able to get that attention that you needed, especially in those formative years. And so I want to hear from Jasmine on, the whole issue of just of how can we expect our teachers to connect with students and get to know them, like what Epiphany is saying, like what Dr. Rachel is saying, when we have so many students crammed into one school or to one classroom? What can we do to be able to provide support in that way, or even to our faculty?
Yeah, so I don't view that as an excuse, because this is people work, right? So you're here for your students. They're not going to listen to you unless they have a relationship. So if you want to get through material, if you want to teach your 35 kids in a classroom, you have to get to know them, right? Fortunately, in most schools, they take the first 2 weeks to go over routines, procedures, etc. That's a perfect time to start the foundation of getting to know your students, getting to know their interests, getting to know their backgrounds, getting to know their goals, which also speaks to Dr. Rachel's point of like kids should start formulating where they see themselves at the end of the year, within the next 2 years, and going through, high school, getting ready for college. Within the Zoom world, so even if you are, Rona is a beast, right? Rona's messing up a lot of things, but it also provides an opportunity. You can easily do small group conversations via Zoom with your classmates, right? So if you meet with 5 kids every day, getting to know them, hearing how their experience is, you're getting a firsthand account of what they need and what they're looking for. So even in the world of Rona, you do small group Zoom chats, you check in with them, you do progress monitoring, where like, how are you feeling about how you're doing in school? Where do you feel like you are with your goals? If we weren't in the world of Rona, you would have lunch bunches. You can have lunch with your kids once a week. You can get to know them after school. I know it's extra time that's less for prepping, but if you build those strong foundational relationships at the beginning and nurture those relationships, you're going to see it pay off tenfold. Yeah. I know there was a question around organizations that you could reach out to that do DEI work. So Embracing Equity is one that I've heard great things about. They support teachers in schools nationally, as well as Callen Consulting. So Callen, Kallen. Those are just the 2 that I've really heard strong recommendations, references from. So the person that asked that question, I'm looking to those 2 organizations first.
Wonderful. What are somebody has a question here Jeff is asking, has anyone, any of you taught SPED, S-P-E-D?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful,
I think actually all of us actually have access to special education students because Dr. H sits in on Dr. Rachel sits in on the IEP meetings and, fights for the students' rights. I don't think that necessarily, just because you don't necessarily interact on a level of the special education students being in your classroom does not mean you don't teach special ed. Every teacher in the United States teaches special education. It is a misconception that general education teachers do not teach special education. It's more of a concept of general education teachers not being as equipped to scaffold, and that's why they have us come in and do different things with it's kind of like a co-teaching kind of thing where we partner up with an educator in order to give them the tools they need to be successful with those students. But every single teacher in the United States of America is a special education student. I mean, sorry, not student.
I wanted to add real quick, a couple of my ladies have joined me. Thank you so much. Community Partners in Riviera Beach, they're doing cultural competency. They also have a housing program along with mental health.
Dr. Rachel, we can't hear you.
Take your hand. Something's going. Move back to where you were.
Right. Yeah.
That's better.
Okay.
Yeah. Stay right there.
Yeah. Community Partners in Riviera Beach. They're doing diversity training. I also have on a colleague of mine that speaks Spanish and knows 0 to 5 and the trauma with children. Yahira George, she's doing groups and things like that to help on it. And I wanted to comment. There's a lot of great comments on there. One thing I think we need to address is the negative comments. I mean, we need to rise above this. This is part of the problem on social media, is to start commenting about what people look like or whatever they're speaking. Let's just stop this here. We're adults.
Right. Right.
This is the issue with America. I mean, go ahead, make fun of whatever. This is a serious issue. I happen to be here because I really feel, but negative and ignorant comments, that's just not going to be tolerated. That's where I put my foot down.
I agree. I think that part of the issue here is, we're in a culture in America that everything is about how you look, and especially in education, I see it. I think that we saw where, especially at least here on the East Coast, I heard where we went into, let's take the pressure off of students focusing on how they look. So now they wear uniforms to school because of those added pressures and all these different things. And so we need to stay focused. And tonight our conversation is about education. It's not about how anybody here looks. We're here to really discuss sharing our expertise, sharing our experiences of how we can fix a systemic problem to move our nation forward, our communities forward, so we can stay focused. And so I do want to stay focused. I want to take a look at some of these comments. Carolyn Mendez said, labeling children in school stays on them and with them into adulthood. Yahara George says, what I'm experiencing with my clients is an ongoing lack of education about trauma information.
Hold on. Let me answer. Can you go back to Carolyn's comment real quick? Because I want to answer that. I saw that and I didn't, we were in the midst of stuff, and I wanted to kind of give a caveat to this. So Jasmine, Dr. Rachel, let me know if I'm speaking incorrectly, okay? Just catch me, because I go a little to the left sometimes. Okay, so yes, you can label a child special with a special need or OHI, which means other health impaired, for them to receive services in order for them to bridge the educational gap. So it's kind of like giving the child a footstool so that they can see over into the field when the other kids are already tall enough to see over into the field. Now, here is my issue with the label being bad, is when parents know something is wrong. Like if I'm consistently calling you, if Jasmine is calling you, if Dr. Rachel is calling you, saying, hey, these are the services that we can offer to help your child, and you say no. It puts us in a bind that not only does it make it frustrating for your child to be in an educational setting, but it's frustrating for the educator because we know we can give more, but we cannot give more without your permission. I don't necessarily view the label as bad because you can always exit your child out of special education services. I think you not accepting those services when the child is young is to their detriment instead of their betterment.
Sure.
And I speak to this because when I worked at my K through 8, and I've never, in all of my years of education, I fought going to elementary because I knew the devil lived in there. Not really, just kidding. But for real, no, just kidding. But for real, it was a challenging environment for me because students don't have the logical ability to understand things at the level that the secondary students are. There's a level of reasoning that you can give to a secondary student that you cannot give to an elementary student, and it takes a little bit more. I got to give a little bit more to get you to understand. So that's what I was fighting. I didn't want to give them more because I felt like I was already given enough. So listen, you already know. So here's the issue. When you're at this level and someone says, it's just detrimental. And when they get into the middle school age where I actually, I prefer to be, or high school, then I'm like, well, what happened at elementary? Well, it's because the parent did not want their child to be labeled in such a manner. So then they're having, again, all of these meetings and this and that. And hold on. I don't understand what is going on.
I'm not that far down in the comments, but we'll get there.
Somebody off the chat? Can we block them?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay, so anyway, I'm not going to give that in my energy. So
I haven't read anything, so I'm oblivious. Go ahead.
Yeah, and trying to manage 2 platforms. It's okay. I'll get to it when I get to Facebook later.
Okay.
You know how I don't give energy to anything negative because it takes away from what we're doing. Right. I would rather focus on the important work that is the conversation.
Right. So I do think that it's important to know as an educator or a parent, really, I'm speaking more to parents at this point, to accept the assistance. Now, if you know that it's not coming from a place of wanting help, which I have been told in certain areas, saying the word help is really bad. Like where I currently work, the district I work in now, you cannot say I want to help your kid. You have to say I want to assist. You have to use other synonyms because it is offensive. So that's part of the culture that I'm currently in. But it's important to know that giving your child assistance to get that leg up is paramount, especially at a young age. Speaking from personal experience, when I was in the 2nd grade, I could not read. Okay. So this is why I went into special education to begin with. I went to resource room. And when they had the meeting with my mother saying they wanted to put me in special education, she was like, no, I'm taking her out of public school. Now, my mom did take me out of public school. She withdrew actually everyone of her children out of public school, which I don't know if it is legal or not. So please don't go withdraw your children from public school because of what Ms. McCann said. But she did teach us, like all 4 of us actually learned how to read in the time that we were out of school. So she bought a curriculum called Abeka, and this Abeka program, I learned my multiplication. I learned how to read. I knew everything by the time I started 3rd grade. So it's whatever you're putting into your children is what you're going to get out as well. It's not just the teacher's job to assist your child. You also have to put in effort. They don't know how to study because you're not explaining. This is how you have to review. If I struggle with this, so this is how I did it. You learn that from your parents because your parents struggle with certain things. Anyway, I'm done with my tangent. I'm sorry. I was thrown off track.
That's okay.
No, that's good stuff. Jasmine, jump in here. I'm just running through some of the comments because I want to start wrapping up and really start talking about some next steps that we can do to help facilitate conversation, start figuring out who we need to talk to really start implementing, and some things that we can do to help educators, those who are professional. We know that so a lot of this is definitely, at the leadership level, but what can we do to start supporting and really start moving forward to help transition and move into a better space as it relates to educating and supporting people in our schools, especially our children.
Mm-hmm. I think the one blessing of what's happening right now is people are looking to read information and gain resources to better expand their view of what education should be, an affirming and inclusive education. So I would say continue with those texts. I mean, I have few that I feel like would be a good starter packet for those that need it. So one would be Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Tatum. Another one would be The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter Woodson. Push Out talks about the criminalization of Black girls in the school system by Monique Morris is another good one. Unapologetic Guide to Black Mental Health by Rita Walker. It's been a personal favorite of mine. I'm really talking about the stigma that's associated with seeking mental health supports within the Black community and how to overcome that to better support your emotional needs. And Care Work, which is talking about disability justice, which is written by Leah Lakshmi. So I think all of those books, I know it's a lot of text to start with, but those have really allowed me to see on a bigger picture, how can we create an inclusive educational experience for students based off of their intersecting identity. So like Epiphany shared, just because I'm a Black woman doesn't mean that I had the same experience as Epiphany. It's not monolithic, right? So getting to understand what's at play for our students that have identity markers that are aligned to, marginalized communities will really allow you to see, okay, what do we need to do? What mindsets and actions do we need to take to shift our perspective of what's possible for Black and brown kids? So I would say start there as a good starting point. If you're a parent, I would also encourage you to read those texts and really start to ask questions to your school around what is your behavior policy? What social emotional supports do you provide at the school? Are these open to all children or just students that are a part of the special population in particular that are a diverse learner or in special education? Once you start to ask those questions and ask more questions associated with that, you're going to get a bigger picture of, is this school doing right by my kid, or is it just creating compliant robots that walk around, right? You really need to start thinking through, like, is my school going to move mountains for my kids, not only with their words, but with their actions? And then from there, there's going to be more fruitful conversations within board meetings, within parent coffee chats, around what steps are you taking to show me that you're walking the talk.
Love it. I think that we definitely have a lot to go. I definitely believe that a lot of the work does begin in the home, and we need to start looking at ways to support students in the home. There's only so much we can do in the classroom, but definitely this is definitely a start, and we do need to get to a point where we can provide what we can to students in the classroom. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Went a little bit over, but I want to catch up on the first 15 minutes that we didn't have sound and we had tech issues. But I do want to continue this conversation at a later date because there's so much more that we can talk about and so many more opportunities and things that we need to be addressing to, again, see what we can do in our communities, what we can do to start being able to provide. Jasmine has some great points. It doesn't matter how many students you have to be willing to want to connect. And at the end of the day, my question is, why do you do what you do? What is your why? And we've got to get back to, why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we getting into our fields? And we are dealing with people. And if you don't like dealing with people, you should not be in any type of career field where you're shaping human minds, especially children. That's an issue for me. And so I think that that's where we need to really start the conversation on what is your why for getting into education, whether you are on the school board, whether you're an administrator, you're a teacher, whatever, somewhere, if you're in education in any capacity, you really should be asking yourself why you are in that role and what you're doing and how you're contributing to building and shaping human minds, how we're making things better. And so I definitely want to continue this conversation. Thank you all so much for your comments. We weren't able to get to all of them, of course, but again, that's why I'm having this series, so that we can really get to the heart of what's happening and how we can, what are some action steps. Thank you, Jasmine, for what you're sharing. Dr. Rachel, Epiphany, do you have anything that you would like to share on what we can do to move forward? And then I'll let you all close with some information on how people can get in touch with you. So
Wait,
Dr. Rachel,
me or Dr. Rachel? I'm confused.
no, we're going to Dr. Rachel. We'll finish with you, and
Okay.
then I'll.
First off, you know, that is a good question, the why. And I always ask people, especially when I do a lot of consulting, why are you in this field? And, you know, and I just want to leave with you ladies. Remember, you know, one of my favorite quotes is, well-behaved women rarely make history.
Step back.
Huh?
Microphone.
Your hand was on your mouth.
There you go.
All right, there, right there. Okay. One of my favorite quotes is, well-behaved women rarely make
Your microphone is out again. Nope. Go backwards.
Right?
Yeah.
There you go.
It's better
You're
when
right
you
there.
do it.
I say, you know, my favorite quote is, well-behaved women really make history. I didn't get this far by being quiet and sitting down and not fighting the issue. What did you want where people can contact?
I'm coming back to that in just a minute.
Okay.
Epiphany, go ahead.
Oh, where do we go next? I think, you know, it starts at the very top and also in the home. So it's got to be the two polarities to kind of the middle part, which is, you know, Jasmine and I, what we do work. So the top needs to change what the requirements are for teachers. You know, we have to hit certain points in every single lesson that we deliver. And a lot of the time, if you look back at how you were able to be taught, we can't teach like that anymore.
Right.
So it's important to note that. So the top needs to be what the funding is for us as teachers, as well as funding us. We're not being funded because we are a female-driven organization or whatever you want to call it. But we're mostly female. So this is why we're not being funded. I don't know if anyone noticed that, but most of us we're not getting funded because of that. The thing is, this as Jasmine said, the Rona is real. You know, I think that this opportunity is taken into account as one of the best times in U.S. history that you will ever get to spend with your family. You're getting to know your family in all the ways that you never knew them before. You know how your child acts with you in class because you see them on the computer cutting up. If you look at Twitter, you see all the parents for teachers at this point. So it's now parents have to become more active in their child's learning, as well as fighting for teachers, administrators, everyone, the school, and as a whole, to get what they need. It doesn't make sense. I think Palm Beach County actually cut, I think it was either Palm Beach County or Broward County that cut funding recently for educators. I think I posted it on my Facebook. So it's important for parents to stay connected and be involved because they're the ones that actually can make change within the schools. And that's where I think we go from here.
Awesome. So we have some amazing panelists. We definitely did not get to everything. We just really scratched the surface on this conversation. But I'm just as passionate about, you know, figuring out a way to stop the school to prison pipeline and really give Black, Latin, minority students a chance at living a life. I agree with, we don't need to be labeling people. We need to understand, you know, culture, everything that we talked about tonight. Ladies, please, we're going to do a round robin and you all let people know how they can connect with you, what are some projects, things that you're working on, how can people get in touch with you, your social media handles. We'll start with Dr. Rachel, we'll go to Jasmine, we'll finish with Epiphany, and we'll close out for the night. So we thank you all so much for joining us. Dr. Rachel, share with the people what you're working on how they can get in touch with you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. My organization is Angels Among Us Services. You can get a hold of me. I'm at angelsamongusinc.com. I'm also on Angels Among Us Services on Facebook, providing therapy. We're doing now teletherapy in all 50 states right now. We are actually working with people that are insured and not insured. There's some grants that I contract with it's income based. If not, we do sliding scale. I try to make the counseling affordable. 561-729-9133 is my direct cell. We're just here to help the community. We're doing a lot with the pandemic. We're working with the depression, the anxiety, the children being cooped up. I also, I do refer if someone is Spanish speaking. I have a colleague that can help me with the Spanish speaking culture. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Jasmine Banks. Tell the people about bankable behavior, baby.
Okay, so you can reach me via Instagram or Facebook, Bankable Behavior. So it's a play on my word, but it more so just encourages people to invest in themselves and their power. So Bankable, BANKABLE, and then behavior. You can also email me if you have any questions, want to have more thorough understanding of what you can do as an educator or a parent, or additional resources to build your knowledge and your true understanding of what it means to create a liberatory education. So my email is bankablebehavior@gmail.com as well. I'm a school principal. I want to give you that information, but other avenues you can definitely reach out. I'm very passionate about just connecting with folks that are about this work. So please don't hesitate to reach out, whether that's just to affirm the conversations we had today, or if you want to continue your own learning, I'm more than happy to do so.
Wonderful.
Epiphany. All right, so I do have my Facebook page. It's Piff Says. It's not really set up like all professional or anything, but if you really need to get a hold of me, you can message me there. Piff Says, so it's PIPHSAYS. You can message me there with whatever questions or concerns you may have. I have little quotes on there with no punctuation, because I hate punctuation, and anytime I don't have to use it, I don't use it. So if you can't read it, I'm sorry.
Thank you all so much again for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Look forward to next week.
And definitely, you all stay in touch if you want. You can always inbox me as well. Have watch parties, have conversations amongst yourselves about this very important topic. We'll keep the conversation going. Stay tuned for the next special town hall on Now What, so we can keep the conversation going and figure out what we can do, some concrete action steps, things that we can do. And we're going to continue to provide some support services and see what we can do to maybe have a running list to make these things accessible to you, and some things you can do in the home, because I know it's a struggle for a lot of parents who are homeschooling right now. Like Epiphany said, you're learning some things about your children.
Yeah.
And this is a great time. COVID is bad. Rona, like Jasmine said, Rona is thing.
She's petty.
Petty. Very petty. But it's teaching us some things about family, and it's an opportunity to definitely strengthen families right now and really help our children. And so thank you all so very much for your time tonight and your commitment, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Have a good evening.